What's up, guys? The Lazy Goldmaker here. Dragonflight was just announced, the new expansion for World of Warcraft. And they actually focused on professions. Who would have thought that? Well, obviously that means there's huge things to discuss, massive changes to how goldmaking will function, how crafting works, how leveling professions, all of that jazz. We're going to dive into it, and I'll share my thoughts, so let's just jump into the new features. So, the first thing we're getting is something called crafting orders. So this is a whole completely new system of trading with other players, where you will post a crafting order, which means you put up the materials needed. They said you could do partial materials and then pay for the rest some way. I don't think that will be used much. And then you can post that to an auction house-like interface at presumably an NPC. You can send that to anyone. You can open them publicly. You can send them to a specific player or a small group of players like your guild. And then they get the materials and they get the commission and they craft the item and you get the item. Presumably they do that by interacting with the UI and just clicking craft the item. Now the really interesting part about this is the fact that you can craft a BOP item with BOP materials. So if I have BOP materials that can be used to craft a very powerful bind and pick up gear piece, but I don't have the recipe, I can put up those materials on a crafting order and I can pay you to have it crafted for me. And they said that this is going to allow them to have much more power progression through professions and have them be more relevant in the end game. That's good news to me and anyone who cares about gold making. Now obviously this is also going to have a huge effect on how gear sales work on the auction house, whether or not people will sell gear straight up. I think there still will be a market for that because people are lazy, they don't want to gather all the materials. There's a reason why most people just buy the finished gear on the auction house today. But this is obviously going to change player behavior very drastically. It will have huge effects that we can only speculate on. I think this looks pretty exciting. Now, they're also revamping professions completely, including profession skill. You now get profession stats. You can have profession gear, and you get profession specializations coming back. All of this playing together. Now, from what it seems to me, this seems very similar to... It seems like they've taken some ideas from New World. And they want to have leveling professions be a much longer process. That's what it seems like based on what they showed. They didn't show that many details. But skill, your profession skill, your profession stats, they're going to impact the items you craft, including the item quality, which is a new attribute on crafted items. Higher quality gear will have a higher item level. Higher quality potions will give you more stats, etc. It remains to be seen how this will play out. Depending on how easy it is to attain max quality for an item, we could end up in a position where literally everything below max quality is irrelevant, just like with legendaries right now. Rank 7 is the only thing that matters. People don't care about the lower ones because they're not the best. With the min-max culture, that could very well be how it ends up looking. But we'll see. It also depends on the barrier to entry, and that's where profession specializations and profession gear comes into play. Because quality will be affected by profession specialization. So if you want to craft armor with blacksmithing, and you want to craft the best armor, you probably need to have invested a lot of points into armor smithing. We don't know exactly how you invest points. They mentioned investing points in the video. But how do you attain these points? Do you attain them by crafting armor? Probably. Can you have multiple specializations? And it's just a case of unlocking them slowly. Either way, presumably they will want maxing a specialization to take a significant amount of effort. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. And if you can only have one specialization, then that will have a huge effect on barriers to entry. That will mean high barriers to entry to any high-end items crafted from that category. And that's going to lead to tons of profit. Regardless of that, being first to market within a specific specialization, if you are the first one to max out armor smithing on your realm, then you are the only one who can craft the best armor that the armor smithing has to offer. You're going to get a ton of crafting orders, you're going to get a ton of sales most likely, and have a nice barrier to entry. So focusing on specific specializations is also going to be a way to make a lot of money, presumably in the next expansion. And then profession gear, in addition to this, you have special profession gear that gives you various profession bonuses and profession stats. This is also ripped off straight off from New World. This is great. Blizzard always steals ideas from other MMOs. All games do, after all. So presumably we're going to find the best stats for whatever you're trying to do and stack those. But it's a cool little way to have an impact on the output of your characters and make crafting a little bit more immersive and a little bit more interesting. Swapping gear around to get the optimal setup is cool in a lot of the other content avenues of World of Warcraft. So having that in crafting as well is pretty cool. Gonna have new item slots for that. So that's gonna be another thing to optimize. We don't know how you'll get the profession gear, so maybe there's some potential even for gold making there. Who knows? Lastly, they mentioned that we will be getting crafting tables in the main hub, which sounds like that's where you have to do your crafting. From like a world immersion point of view, this is kind of cool. It's going to create a little bit more life. But from like a personal point of view, that's also a significant step back for quality of life. Gonna kind of be annoying if you're an alchemist and you just ran out of flasks and you're about to start an M+ and you're like, oh god, I have to go back to the main city to craft another flask because I can't craft one here even though I have the materials in my bank. But yeah, not a huge deal. It's kind of cool from a world building perspective, so I don't mind it. It doesn't matter much at all. Now, obviously, there's a ton of other changes not related to the profession revamp. We'll talk about those as we get closer to the expansion. Some of them are going to have impacts on the gold making scene by creating new avenues for people to care about gear or specific items. But yeah, overall, I think this is going to shake up the gold making meta quite significantly. And that means that we're going to have a new expansion launch where market dynamics from the past might not be true. Particularly for barriers to entry for specific markets, like focusing on a specific specialization is going to be most likely very impactful early on, unless they make the specialization pointless or have very low impact. So I think that's going to be a main way how people can get extra value out of their professions from a gold making perspective, because not many people will be able to compete with you if you're first to market maxing out a specific specialization. Crafting orders, who knows? I think they're going to be it's going to be interesting to see how they shake out the gold making meta. It's going to be a fun expansion. There's going to be some stuff to figure out, particularly early on. I'm really looking forward to that. That's my favorite part of gold making. And honestly, I'm excited for Dragonflight. I hope you are. We'll see you when we get more news. Thanks for watching. Bye.